So now we're going to work on the wax up. So we're going to start by importing some teeth onto our wax up model, or our prepped model. Going up here, we're going to add some teeth. You're going to have a few selections to choose from. My personal favorite is this Meshmixer Pontic library. And I'm going to select the teeth I want. I selected the first one normally with left click, and then these other ones I'm shift clicking and hit OK. And you're going to see I can control the tooth here, kind of approximate where I want it to be. It's always going to be the tooth that you first selected on that previous menu. I'm going to hit shift and left click, and it's going to throw them in. And now I'm just going to do my best to try to position these over the preps. And I might have to adjust obviously the individual sizes of these teeth. But first I'm going to put them in a relatively good position in relation to one another in the prepped model. You're going to see me turning on the actual impressions of the teeth periodically, because I would like to see where I am in relation to what his actual smile looks like, which I have a picture here, so I'm going to be referencing this from time to time to make sure that I'm not violating anything in his smile line. Generally speaking, I like where his central incisor position is. I might be able to lengthen them just a little bit, but it just goes to show that since I definitely not going to go shorter on them, I know for sure that when I'm referencing the original impression that I'm not going any shorter than those. You can probably also tell that at least in relation to his pupils, I mean, things are relatively straight. The nice thing about doing these, and what I'll do is use this wax up for his temporaries, and I'll be able to look at his temporaries and see if there's any adjustments I need to make when I eventually take this to Serac. And then when I'm inside of the program, the Serac program, I can take time to modify the teeth even further. So I don't have to have this be perfect up front. So I'm going to continue adjusting these. One thing that's kind of useful is there's you can see me use these large arrows to bodily move the teeth. If you use the small arrows, they're going to shift this entire sphere. And so like right now, I enjoy the incisal positions as they are right now. So I don't want those to really change as I mold other features. So I'm going to put this circle that's right at the incisal edges. So now when I'm moving these teeth or tilting them, the incisal edges are pretty much staying still. So that's probably a better position right there. I still feel like I need to bring them out just a little bit. You can actually already tell how much tooth number 10 kind of sticks out in relation to at least where I have this mock-up number 10 wax up tooth. It's going to need some serious repositioning. I'm paying attention mostly to the central incisors. Laterals I'm not quite paying attention to yet. I just want them to move with my other teeth. I want it all in relation to one another. I mean, that's probably as close as I'm going to get before making individual adjustments to the teeth in terms of position and shape. So obviously these look like crowns at this point. I'm going to have to come back in here, and I'm using a smooth tool, and I'm just going to take down a lot of this anatomy. Actually, I don't care too much for that anatomy look. There's this local geometry transform tool, which is really nice. If you're familiar with Sirac, this will feel very familiar to you. And obviously there are areas of this tooth that I am not prepping. So one thing I might do is make this translucent and kind of get a sense of where I generally am going to be. But before I get too much into that, I want to really get the centrals nailed down first. So I'm always trying to look in relation to, even if I turn off these laterals, make sure that position looks okay. And I feel like I see a little bit of a cant still. So I'm going to turn these teeth back on and try to fix that cant. Seeing a little bit of burn through on the incisal edge doesn't worry me too much. The midline looks pretty spot on, although I feel like number 8 needs to come mesially, which I want anyway, because you can probably tell that there's actually this dark line right down the center. These teeth are not in physical contact. Here you can see it right there too. There's just this, you can see the yellow of the model burning through. These teeth don't touch. I want them touching, so I'm going to manipulate the individual teeth here, and you're going to see this additional tool. It's a circle. This allows you to kind of deform things. So just to show you the example, I can shift the tooth in this dimension, and I don't want this tooth too much wider compared to the other tooth, but I do want to make contact, so I'll probably expand both sides to make sure they come in the middle without too many issues. And I'm just looking at symmetry just to make sure that they look similar in size. You know, one thing I'm already seeing that I don't like, the contours of the distal of this is a little bit different than the distals of 8, so I'm going to need to bring that in a little bit. So I'm going to take the smooth tool and make sure my strength is pretty low, and I'm holding down shift here and scrolling my mouse down to adjust the size, and I'm going to just kind of dab this a little bit. Now it looks a little better to me and a little bit more symmetric. Again, I'd like to have a reference to the natural teeth, which before you could see the edge of this tooth and that's covered up now, but now I can notice that this edge is sticking out now. So now I feel like I need to go back and do a similar adjustment where I'm just kind of bringing this in just a tad to cover up similar areas. And now I'm just trying to see where, so this tooth is expanded way farther distal. My wax up is compared to the natural tooth, which is fine. Obviously we need to close up these spaces, but it's probably a little more so than I hope. But again, I mean, everything has to be done in relation to one another and kind of more proper ratios, and these teeth are designed with pretty good ratios already considered. So as long as I can keep a contact over here and move this over, I might keep this width where it is. We'll see, but regardless, you can see underneath where I have my prep, and I need, these teeth are obviously extending beyond my prep, so I need to make adjustments to this to bring it back to my predicted margins. So I'm using this local geometry tool, and I'm looking for those margins, and it's kind of hard to see with certain colors. Yellow is a little bit tough. can change the color by clicking on this here, and I find the darker colors tend to work a little bit better. Mostly because there's such a glare in this program. I wish that they would allow you to modify how much there's a glare. And you can tell that there's pieces of the tooth underneath, which obviously doesn't really matter how that's shaped, but it helps to be able to grab that beyond the model. Because if I grab right here, it's a lot more dramatic when I'm changing things as opposed to right here, especially when I'm trying to get very subtle things done on the margins. If we're doing crowns, it would matter a lot more back here, but I'm not doing crowns, so I'm going to get a little bit more aggressive with this area. It does look like my veneer original prep kind of stops right here, so you can start to see my prep coming through here. I need to make sure I'm not extending beyond those boundaries. It's starting to look a little bit funny because these marginal ridges are really pronounced. Kind of smoothing those back down. Sometimes when you smooth them, it'll bring it back again. I'm trying to be really careful not to modify the incisal edge as much as I can. It's like if I were to make this huge and start modifying things, it's going to take my incisal edge with me, but I'm happy with that position, so I'm trying to keep my tool not really extending onto the area of the incisal edge. Some of my aggressiveness lost my my margins here, so I gotta bring that back. I do need to cover this area up. And it's not a huge deal to have it extend into parts of the tooth you don't plan on prepping. It just means that when you make your temp, you're gonna end up with a little excess material that probably end up just getting flicked off. You know, in another video, I'll probably go into how you can make a shell temp in advance, especially if you have 3D printing available to you. So this tooth is pretty much done. I might do a little bit more modification as I finish up the other teeth just to keep things in symmetry. But the marginal adaptation looks pretty good to me. It looks like I have plenty of clearance from where my preps are predicted to be. You know, there's certain aspects of the shape I'm still not in love with. I feel like this kind of bows out a little bit more dramatically, which again might have has a lot to do with the fact that there's a space between these teeth still that I'll need to address. I'm gonna come over and work on the other tooth now. Alright, the 8-9 position looks pretty good to me. Still not 100% happy with the way that the shape of the tooth is so dramatic from the gum line to the incisal edge. But I'm going to work on the laterals and try to get those positioned a little bit better. Now once I have everything in relatively good position, especially in relation to the margins and the shape, then I will come back and start making all the fine-tune adjustments to what I want shape-wise. So one thing I learned is you don't have to necessarily hit all these arrows to move the tooth. You can actually, as long as you're not highlighting any of these areas, you can just try to grab the tooth itself and you can move it just bodily in space. So I'm going to do that. Trying to get it to where I'm happy with where the incisal edges are. And then, kind of like what I did earlier, I'm going to bring this out so that my incisal edge isn't really affected. So when I tilt this outwards, I'm kind of filling in that space that's deficient. And hopefully that kind of matches up with the other teeth, which it seems to. Kind of looking at a profile view of the teeth helped me determine that. I haven't even really modified the contacts, but the contacts actually don't look too bad. The tough part is going to be trying to bring this tooth out to fill in these black triangles as much as I can, but still make it so that it's following along the margins. So this is a good place to start. That's probably would work fine for the time being as a starting wax up. I'm still going to come in and go through with you some fine-tuned things. I want to get the shape of this lateral and this lateral. You know, they are symmetric, which is nice, and they don't actually look that bad. I just prefer a little bit more of a flatter area than kind of curving up, kind of more in a traditional sense, not with this little mamelon indentation on the edge. Try to get it to match the centrals just a little bit more. Even the centrals might be, I might flatten the incisal edges a little bit too. And then, like I've mentioned before, try to get these areas to not look so dramatically round. And make sure that I'm preserving all my contacts. So I'm going to end this video, and I will resume with the fine-tuning portion.